We're just waiting for the YouTube to go live, and then we'll. Okay, I think we're live already. Ladies and gents, we're live and alive. We have been giving out these documents here. This is the Mechiras Chametz form, okay? If you didn't get one, please pick one up, fill it out, and put in there your information of the chametz that you want to sell, so you can have all your chametz for Pesach sold, and it will not be yours on Pesach. In fact, this morning I met with the Beis Din discussing some of our plans and necessities and how we're going to do it for our Pesach retreat. So I'm going to encourage everybody to do their out of the way. It's not going to be owned by you or by a Jew on Pesach. We discussed that yesterday in more detail. Remember, even if you're going away for Pesach, you still need to sell your chametz, because chametz that's owned by a Jew on Pesach is forbidden to be used, to have any benefit from, even after. Yeah. It's not going to be owned by you or by a Jew. Sure, I will be here actually tomorrow. I'll be, but you can collect them. Yeah, but I'm around, usually around as well. Sure, absolutely, yeah. On that note, also I want to say that tomorrow I would like to encourage your participation in doing matzah packing, especially if you want one of those matzahs yourself. Help us pack them. So we are packing matzah, shmor matzah, to give out, and we would love for you to be part of that project, that we could get the matzahs out to everybody. It's nice, it's fun, it's participating in this mitzvah, giving you a chance to contribute in a way of packing it, making it nice for distribution, so that we can give out the matzahs to everybody in the community who needs. Okay. What else are we discussing here? We already discussed the sale of chametz. Here's the blessings that you will say when you search for your chametz and when you burn the chametz, but because we already discussed that, I'm going to go forward. I want to jump into candle lighting for Pesach, and the truth is, there's probably a lot more to talk about in Erev Pesach, but I haven't prepared slides for it. So we could just discuss quickly. Erev Pesach has all the preparations you need to do. The main thing I want to tell you not to do in Erev Pesach is don't eat matzah. What else to do? Get some good rest so you can have a nice Seder if you need the rest. What else should you do? You should make sure that you are well-versed and prepared, and that's what we're doing here. We're discussing the Seder. We already went through the Seder plate. We already talked about sale of chametz. We already talked about the search for the chametz and the burning of the chametz. We went through what you should be buying, and pretty much everything we're discussing in this. Just a minute. I see whenever everyone's hands goes up, I will take all. Yeah. Okay. Good. So we'll get to that each item and discuss it. So I'm just going in the order of my slides that I prepared in the past, but I might jump around. But the idea is Erev Pesach is going to make sure everything that you need for your Seder to be prepared. Of course, if you come to a retreat, on the retreat, we have entertainment and lectures and activities and arts and crafts and spa treatments and hairdos and all that stuff. So that's kind of stuff that you get on a retreat. But at home, I'm assuming also you want to make sure you look tziputz and pretty and ready for the holiday when it arrives. I was looking through, as we're preparing our schedule now to print for the guest, and you look through the items that have to be ready, set up. What do? You have to have a big lunch, you have to have a tea room, you have to have more snacks, you have to have desserts. So the truth is, halachically speaking, you should not overeat in Erev Pesach. Why shouldn't you overeat in Erev Pesach? Because you want to have a nice, good, hearty appetite at the Seder. But I'm sure, my mother used to say, mit den Essen kommt ein Appetit, which means when the food comes, there's an appetite. And there's plenty of good food. So no doubt you make a plan and make sure that you are ready and prepared. And all the things we'll get to and through. Maybe next week we could discuss some other items, but I'm going to fast forward on the Erev Pesach day, because I believe that everyone's schedule is different. Some people are making the Mara and Charosis and all the items themselves, as we used to do in my parents' house. So you have a lot more work. If you are not doing that, then I would suggest prepare spiritually during the day. Go through your Haggadah, which we're doing here now. Go through the other items and aspects of your preparation. Yes, Rebbetzin.
There is on Erev Pesach a deadline.
Yeah, we discussed that yesterday. So just for locally, 9:45 a.m., we terminate all consumption of chametz. By 10:45 a.m., you make sure to burn your chametz. If you want to burn your chametz earlier, that's fine. I'm sure many shuls are going to have right after the Shachris minyan a big fire, and you will be able to burn the chametz. In fact, that takes me to one more item. This applies to the men folk here, and that is on Erev Pesach. If any of you are a firstborn, any of you firstborn? Who's a firstborn here? A firstborn male. Ladies are exempt because the plague of the firstborn, I believe, was only on the firstborn males. Okay, also the firstborn males had the privilege of serving in the temple. So if you're a firstborn and you're a firstborn and you're a firstborn, so you will have an opportunity. You're supposed to fast on Erev Pesach because you were spared in the plague of the firstborn. However, our sages don't encourage you fasting. Instead, what you should do is get to shul and be part of a siyum. A siyum is the culmination, the completion of the study of a cycle of a tractate of Talmud. And thereby, it becomes a Seudas mitzvah, a celebration, a mitzvah, that you completed such a monumental, important study. Now, even if you didn't do so yourself, somebody in the shul did it. So I have no doubt, whichever shul you go to, they will be having a siyum celebration, and you will be able to take part in that and to eat food and enjoy your day. I had to fast for the last, well, not the last 4 years, but up until 2021, I had to fast every year because I had a firstborn son. And the father fasts on behalf of his child until the child's bar mitzvah. So I did the fasting each year, but now I let my son fast himself or be part of a siyum. Okay, let's talk about the candles. Women and girls have the special mitzvah of candle lighting for Yom Tov. And on the first night, 2 blessings are recited. The first blessing is in honor of the Yom Tov itself, right? Ahadlik ner shel Yom Tov. And the second blessing is Shecheyanu ekiyemanu ve'yigianu lizman hazeh Shecheyanu ve'kiyemanu ve'yigianu lizman hazeh lazman hazeh Lazman hazeh, lazman hazeh, lazman hazeh. Online participants, sing along with us. Shecheyanu v'kiyemanu lazman hazeh. Shecheyanu v'kiyemanu lazman Lazman. Okay, I won't do the harmonies here. All right. Oh, yes. Did I disappoint you? You thought you had to sing. You could sing if you want. It makes the house more lebedik. Now, of course, ladies, when you light your candles, I want you to have in mind at the time, have in mind your children, have in mind your husbands. If they're around, even if they're not around any longer, you could still think of them and think of your blessings to have, you know, the man in your life, but very importantly, to bestow blessings to your children, okay? In fact, there's a beautiful, powerful blessing that many women say, a tchina, a prayer, and that is, V'zakeyeni legadel, I shall merit to raise, banim uvnei banim, children and grandchildren, Chachamim unevoinim, who are wise and discerning. Oyavei Hashem yirei Elokim, lovers of Hashem and God-fearing. Anshe emes, truthful, sincere people. Zera kodesh, holy seed. Ba Hashem dveikim, who cleave to attach and do follow the ways of Hashem. Umeirim es ha'yilam, b'torah v'masim tovim, uv'chol meleches avodas haboreh, and they illuminate the world with Torah and good deeds, and following and emulating the ways of Hashem. That's the loose translation of that song. So if you didn't light your candles at sunset, this year Pesach begins on a Wednesday night. When Pesach begins on a Friday, you obviously have to light it before sunset, 18 minutes before sunset. When Pesach begins on a Saturday night, as it did last year, and as it did in 2021, and as it will again in 2045, okay, 19 years time, then you will also have to do it
That
later.
strike in which we now know
We'll
at
have
least
some
4
Friday
people were
night Seder's
killed.
with you.
There's meant to be a surgical strike, but clearly it's having an impact on the entire area. Tell us more.
Sorry, who's interrupting us? Whoever's got the Galaxy, please mute your device. Thank you. So now, this year, it is on a Wednesday night, which is not Shabbos. Therefore, while it's ideal that you should light your candles 18 minutes before sunset, you can light it later as well. I suggest you light it before your Seder. Of course, if you light it in the middle of the Seder, Nish Geferlich, it's also okay. Just be careful, gentlemen, if you're lighting your cigarette. I mean, I'm not encouraging or endorsing anybody to smoke. But one year, my brother-in-law was lighting his cigarette for my mother's Shabbos candles. My mother lit a lot of candles because she had 8 of us children plus grandchildren. So she had a lot of candles. She had these 2 beautiful candelabras, silver candelabras. And my brother-in-law wanted to ignite a cigarette. So, sometimes people are very cool. They put the cigarette in their mouth and they go with the cigarette. That's what he did. This was the middle of the Seder. And I had a nice bowl of chicken soup with fake knedlach inside, because we don't eat real knedlach in the Chabad tradition until the last night. And his beard caught fire and went into my soup. It wasn't so lekker, and it did, and it stunk. It had such a terrible stench. It's not a pleasant fragrance, burnt beard here. So I don't recommend it for anyone. All right. While we got the candles up here, any other things about candles? Of course, married women generally light 2 candles. And single women light 1 candle. Young girls were encouraged by the Rebbe to light candles too. So if you've got granddaughters from age 3, they're encouraged to light candles, and you as a granny can light with them. Yeah. One candle per grandchild, per child or grandchild. But a married woman lights 2. Here's the question. If a woman gets divorced, does she go back to 1? I don't think so. I don't know. I don't know the halacha on that. I don't think it's a halacha. I think it's custom. But I don't know. If anyone here had that experience, feel free to share.
There is an appeal out that when you light your candles to one out.
Absolutely. Have in mind the IDF, have in mind all those who need blessings and peace. Absolutely. Okay, so again, because it's not Shabbos this year, you can light your candles later. That's not a problem. And we did the blessings already for the candle lighting. So now I want to go to the next step. This, I know it's not so clear on the screen, but I'm going to put it here anyways. Why? Because this is one of the important aspects that people miss out on, and I want to read it to you. Because our temple is not yet rebuilt, right? Even though Tucker Carlson thinks that Chabad is responsible for the war because we want to rebuild the 3rd temple. So let me make it very clear that the 3rd temple will be rebuilt by Hashem when Mashiach comes. We're not going to force God's hands. We try to. We're going to do good mitzvahs and bring a better world, and hopefully a world in which there will be no war, no more wars, and no more illness, etc. But as Mashiach hasn't yet arrived, we will not be able to bring the Korban Pesach unless Mashiach is here before Pesach. Now, under such circumstances, the custom is that we study out loud the order and the rules for the Korban Pesach, for the Pesach offering, as it was brought in the times of the temple, which was done on the afternoon before the Seder night. So this is done immediately after davening mincha. So I'm going in the order of how I see my retreat. After at the same time as candle lighting, we do mincha. And so I'm going to go through this now. The ladies light candles, the men go for mincha, but ladies are also welcome. And I think it's important. And if you've not read the Korban Pesach, although I have the text here in Hebrew, do you want me to do it in Hebrew and English or just in English? You want Hebrew and English? Okay. We'll go line by line, Hebrew and English. Okay. Now, there are 3 planes upon which you could do any mitzvah. You could think about it, right? You could speak about it. Of course, doing it is actually the most important part. But what if you can't do it for some reason? Remember the story of the 2 brothers in the bathroom and they couldn't, right? You can't pray. Well, for example, the Korban Pesach, you can only offer a sacrifice when we have a temple. Since we don't have a temple, how are you going to offer a sacrifice? So our sages say you could still be engaged in the holiness of the mitzvah and the divine beauty of the mitzvah by immersing your mind, your thought dimension, and filling your mouth with its words and feelings in your heart. So what I want to do with you now is take the time to read you the Korban Pesach, okay? Because it's fascinating, because many people don't get a chance to do it. So this is the Seder of the Korban Pesach. What is the source for this? I imagine it's from the Mishnah, I think. Okay? So let's read it. We'll read it in the Hebrew, translate in English along the way. It's on the screen so you can follow along as well. Korban Pesach, the Korban, for the Pesach offering. Maybe min akvasim and izim zacha ben shana. You could bring a lamb or a goat, a male in its first year. So my father used to ask me a trivia. What do you call those trivia questions, trick questions? Huh? There's a name for it he used to have for it. I forget what it was. Anyways, he had a little trivia he would ask me every year, Erev Pesach. What if the lamb or goat was pregnant? Let's read the line again. For a Korban Pesach, you could bring a lamb or a goat, a male, Zachar ben Shana, a male in its first year. Thank you. He wanted to make sure I was reading it correctly. I remember being dumbfounded. What do you mean? If it's pregnant, so what? What do you do then? I don't know. I was confused, but the first line says it. Okay. Just to engage you. It can be slaughtered anywhere in the temple courtyard. But only after midday, Arba'a Asar Dafka of the 14th. So can I offer the Korban Pesach today? No, it will be like the poor destitute fellow who came to the Purim party, and what he took was that hollow ring, the hollow, what do you call that? The bell. The bell doesn't help you if you ring it and you don't have staff in the kitchen who are going to come out with platters, right? The same thing. If you offer the Korban Pesach any day but the correct day, it doesn't count. You haven't fulfilled your mitzvah. But I'm going to go to the next trivia question for you. It's not a trick one. Is that completely true? What if you couldn't bring it on the 14th for some reason? A couple of years ago, some people had COVID. Oh, Pesach Sheni. Pesach Sheni is one of the only mitzvahs in the Torah where the Torah itself explicitly gives you a second chance. If you missed Yom Kippur, sorry, buddy, you missed it. Even though there's a great story of a chazan, Tzudek Grunwald. I was paying a shiva visit the other day, and a fellow was talking to me. I asked him where he's from. He says he's from Frankfurt am Main. I said, oh, you're from Frankfurt. There's a great story I know from Frankfurt. But I keep forgetting the name of the chazan. So he reminded me yesterday of the name of the chazan. Do you guys remember the story? You want me to tell it to you again? I told it to you before. You don't mind repeating it? Okay. It's a good story, but I'm going to show you the contrast. When it comes to Pesach, the Torah gives you a second chance. Pesach, you have a chance a month later. But no other holiday has this. But let me tell you a holiday where it did happen. Chazan Tzadok Grunwald is a very powerful chazan. He's got a beautiful tenor voice, powerful, beautiful. He could project. He sings nicely. Tzadok Grunwald, or Tzudek Grunwald, the Hasidic Yid. He lives in Israel. And for Yom Tov, each year they fly him out to Frankfurt. He has a job in a shul there, big shul in Frankfurt, where he is the chazan each year. And a couple of years ago, the story happens that he was at the shul. Yom Kippur concluded. You know, everybody's rushing home after the break fast because the shul break fast serves you bulkas and orange juice. In our shul, we put out a nice spread, actually. But I saw this year, even though I put out an enormous spread, not everybody stayed for the spread. A lot of people were rushing off to the traditional break fast parties. And I get invited to a bunch of them, but that night I'm usually busy. You got to build the sukkah. There's so much to do. I'm exhausted because I run the whole service myself. Anyways, so everybody's rushing out of shul. Tzudek is the last one there. He has a flight to catch the next morning back to Israel to be back with his family for Sukkot. In the meantime, you know, he's not in a hurry. He's going to rush to his hotel room and be himself. So he took his time before leaving the shul, relax, calm down, have something to eat and drink. And now he was ready to go an hour after the service was done. As he's leaving the shul, the only one left inside is Temba, or the Temba in their shul in Frankfurt. And he closes all the lights. And as the chazan leaves, he locks the door behind him. But as the chazan goes down the steps, he sees a Jew walking up the steps. And the guy looks at the Chazan Grunwald and says, "Isn't tonight Yom Kippur? Why are the lights of the shul off?" Chazan Grunwald looks at the fellow and says, "Sorry to disappoint you, buddy, but Yom Kippur was yesterday. We just concluded. Yom Kippur was already today. We just concluded." And the man looks at him in utter disappointment and says, "What do you mean? Did I miss Kol Nidre?" Yeah, Kol Nidre was last night. Here you have a mature man, a fellow in his 50s, an adult, not a senior citizen, not a little kid. And the guy bursts into tears crying. Didn't look like the scene of somebody who cries. You know, sometimes in our elder years, we allow ourselves to be more vulnerable. Little kids, we know they could cry, but a mature adult like this, so what's the matter? Something seems to have struck he's gotten very emotional. And he tells the Chazan he's not a religious Jew at all, by any stretch of anyone's imagination. But once a year, Yom Kippur, he goes to shul, because this is what he promised his father on his deathbed, that every year Yom Kippur he'll go to shul and never miss. This is the first time he messed up the dates on his calendar. This is not a century ago, not some time when you wouldn't be able to know the dates. This is recent, a couple of years ago. Well, what would you do if you, Chazan Grunwald, he says, look, you may have missed the congregation's version of Kol Nidre, but come, let's go back in the shul. They knock on the door, the Temba opens up for them. Oh, Temba's here. See, I always get the right props. He opens up for them. They come back into the shul. And while the fellow's cleaning up, Chazan Grunwald puts back on his kittel. He puts back on the Chazan's hat. You know that Chazan's hat. He puts on the talus. And once again, he gives a beautiful rendition of Kol Nidre, just for one person, for one Jew. No missed it. Isn't that amazing, eh? Anyways, let's continue reading it. The Shechet Ba'azara, it could be slaughtered in the Azara, which was the temple courtyard. B'chol Makayim, in any place in the courtyard. But when is it done? On the 14th of Nisan, midday onward. Okay, Achar Chatzos. What time is Chatzos? Midday. If you want to know what time Chatzos will be on this Erev Pesach, it's at 12:14 p.m. Actually, in Rustenburg, it's 12:14. In Johannesburg, it will be 12:11. You can't ask me the time what it will be in New York or in even Cape Town. I don't know. But two cities I know, Johannesburg and Rustenburg. I've been doing some homework, my friends. So 12:11 in Johannesburg is Chatzos. Why is that relevant? Because in the evening, you have to finish your Afikoman before midnight, before 12:11 a.m. And if we were offering the Korban Pesach sacrifice, you have to bring it only after 12:11 p.m. midday. Okay, but that time is not really relevant unless Mashiach is here, in which case you probably need Jerusalem Standard Time, not ours. Let's continue reading. It also has to be after the regular daily afternoon offering is slaughtered. So there's a rule. Tadir v'she'enai tadir, tadir kodem. Can anybody translate that for me? Well, we go with what's usual and what's unusual. Which one takes priority? The usual. Every day there's an offering. So first we do the daily afternoon sacrifice. And only after that one's brought can you go bring the Korban Pesach, which is annually, only once a year. Wait, there's one more thing that has to be done. You have to clean the cups of the menorah. Every day, every evening, late afternoon, the Kohen Gadol would light the menorah. It's part of the job of the Kohen Gadol. But they always cleaned out the previous day's lighting. You know, on Hanukkah, when we light our menorahs, maybe even after every Shabbos, you might notice it gets a little schmutzig. So each week, you probably have to clean out all that wax. The menorah in the temple was lit with what? Oil, olive oil. And it could get messy. And it needs a little cleanup. Especially, they probably had big wicks in there to last for many, many hours. Now, other rules that you need to know. It is forbidden to slaughter the Korban Pesach as long as you have chametz in your possession. So, biblically speaking, from what point are you not allowed to have the chametz? It only says in the Torah on Pesach, right? Pesach. Pesach starts at night. But now we're saying when you offer the Korban Pesach. When is the Korban Pesach offered? From midday. So therefore our sages enacted that you're not allowed to have chametz in your possession from midday. However, they said, because we don't want that midday comes and you're now panicking, what am I going to do with my chametz? So that's why our sages, if you were wondering why we do it earlier, the sages gave us times a few hours before, so we don't be last minute. Okay, because I know if we could be last minute, I would be taking advantage all the way to the last minute. That's me. What other rules? We said, I'm losing the place. Okay, let me just find it. The im shachat koydam latamid. What if you slaughtered it before the daily afternoon offering? What happens then? Is it invalidated? There are certain rules in the temple. If you transgressed, if you violated, if you broke that rule, it would become unacceptable. However, we say kosher. It is still acceptable if you offered it before the afternoon offering. Okay? You didn't realize, you were hasty. It happens, yes? That's fine. However, we still give you a caveat that even though you offered it, you slaughtered it before the daily offering, but as long as you have someone stir the blood of this offering so that it doesn't congeal before the blood of the daily offering of the carbon tamid is sprinkled. Okay, so there was a process in the temple where they sprinkled it on the altar. So you want to congeal it. You want to mix it so it doesn't congeal. Okay, it mustn't congeal. Now, I don't work in any industry with blood much, so I don't know, but I guess blood could congeal otherwise. Next, the blood of that Pesach offering needs to be sprinkled once toward the base of the altar. The Ketzad Oisen, how was that done, my friends? You want to know how it was done? Should probably show you a movie, a film on how it was done, but let's read it in the Haggadah. Shochat hashoichet. It was done as follows. The Kohanim formed lines from the slaughtering area to the altar. Okay? And the Kibel HaKohen Rishon Sheberesh Ashur V'Nas L'Chaberei V'Chaberei L'Chaberei V'Hakohen HaKohen V'Etel HaMizbeach Zorka Zrika Achas Keneged HaYesod. Let's translate. As soon as someone slaughtered the animal, the Kohen at the head of the line collected its blood and poured it into a container. Now you have an assembly line. He handed that over to the next in line, and that Kohen to the next, and so on, until the Kohen nearest the altar sprinkled it once towards the base of the altar. And what happens then? The Kohen then returned the empty container to the one before him, and that Kohen to the next, and each Kohen was continually receiving full containers and passing back the empty ones, always making sure to receive a full one before passing back an empty one. So if you thought that, which Ford was it? Henry Ford started the assembly line. It existed long before Ford was around in the temple. Okay. There were rows of silver containers and rows of golden containers. And my friends, to prevent the blood from congealing, if it was still for too long, because that's what happens, the nature of blood. So what would they do? None of them had flat bottoms. And what do you think that did? That prevented it from staying still, right? Because if you had a flat bottom, you would put it down, and then it might get congealed. Because it's not allowed to be congealed. So you see, they also had brains back then. They had innovative ways of preventing the violation of the law. What else does it say here? Let's translate. Next, they hung the carbon Pesach, they flayed it completely, they tore it open, and cleansed its bowels until all the waste came out. Okay, any of you in the butchery business? Okay. And now, after that, they then took out the parts of the animal, and they offered them on the altar. I guess this was part of the sacrifice. The fat and all of that entailed, the lobe with the liver, the two kidneys with the fat in them. Okay, we'll read that words right here. What was it? Hachelev shalakarev, that is the fats that is on the entrails. You have yoiseres hakave, the lobe of the liver, ushtei kloyos v'hachelev shaleim, and 2 kidneys with the fat that's on them, v'ha'alyal umas ha'atza, and the tail up to the backbone, v'noisna b'chli shares, and place them in a ritual container. Okay. Now the kohen would salt them, and he burned them on the altar al gabi hamizbech, kol echad levate, each one individually. Vashchita vazrika michoy kravav v'hekter chalav doichenes haShabbos. Now, can you do this on Shabbos? Are you sure? Well, it says it in front of us. Let's read it. The slaughtering and the sprinkling of its blood, the cleansing of its bowels, and the burning of the fat override Shabbos. Okay? But anything else does not. Anything else done does not violate, does not override Shabbos. Now, this is very relevant because it's in this week's parsha. This week's parsha, we have Hayaka Pekudei. We're going to read 3 parshas this week. 3. Only 2 Torahs. The first Torah we're going to take out. We're going to read the end of Exodus, Hayaka Pekudei, and we're going to say Chazak, Chazak, V'nis Chazak. That's the first Torah. The second Torah we're going to take out is going to be the book. We're going to do HaChodesh, also in Exodus. We're going to go back to HaChodesh Alechem Rosh Chodashim, reading that this month should be the head of months for you. Which month? Nisan. Now let me tell you something fascinating. If Rosh Chodesh Nisan is the beginning of our accounting for time, then what day would creation have been? On the 25th of Adar, which is this coming Shabbos. Of course, we say that while creation happened on the 25th of Elul, and we count creation from Elul, Rosh Hashanah celebrates the creation of man, but we count time, months, years from our Exodus, which is Nisan. Okay. In our parsha, we're going to read about the first section as the laws of Shabbos relating to the temple. Why do we read the laws of Shabbos relating to the temple? To remind us that even though you're building a home for God, it doesn't override the laws of Shabbos. But here we see, as we read the Korban Pesach, that there are times, such as this instance, that there are certain laws of Shabbos that can be overridden in order to prepare. So let's read that line again. The slaughtering, the sprinkling of its blood, the cleansing of its bowels, and the burning of its fat, those override Shabbos. But anything else done does not override Shabbos. Okay? We know that where was the Korban Pesach eaten? Where did you eat this lamb chops and all these delicious gastronomic delights that you got from your lamb offering? You ate it at home. Or your hotel, if you didn't live in Jerusalem. So if the 14th of Nisan, though, occurs on Shabbos, you can't bring it home. Okay? What did you do then? Instead is a different setup. One group remains with their Korban Pesach offering on the Temple Mount outside the temple courtyard. And the second group sits in the area that's called the Chel. The Chel was an intermediate area just outside the temple court. And then you have a third group, and the third group, they wait in their place in the temple courtyard. Everybody has to wait till it's dark outside. After nightfall, then after night falls, what happens then? They have various groups. So they waited till after nightfall. Everybody goes to their places, roasts their Korban Pesach. I imagine you had a lot of pits, a lot of bonfires, a lot of barbecue grills in Jerusalem. And now you roasted your Korban Pesach, and then you could go home and eat it with your group. How many people in a group? It's going to tell us right here, and I'll take your question right after this. Ein kas psucha mishloishim anashim. No less than 30 people per lamb. You could do more. Now let's think about it now. If I made a braai here for lunch and brought a whole lamb, do you think 30 of us could devour a lamb? You never met such hungry Jews. I'm sure a lot more than 30 people could enjoy it. But the minimum was 30 people. Okay, so again, you had, let's just read it again. There were 3 groups. Each one was offered as 3 groups. That's 90 people. Each group is a minimum of 30 people. It's a minimum of 90 people per group. Okay. There could be more. It could be a lot more. You say, this is too much for me. You had a lot more. First Rebbitzin, then Tzipora. Yeah? Yeah. Yeah. The women were part of this, but there was a ladies section where, I don't know, I wasn't there, so I can't tell you for sure. So I don't know, but there was a women's section back in temple times. Okay, there was the Ezrat Nashim. I have a feeling not. They probably set up the beautiful meal at home, and now the husband would come back, or the other members of the group with them, to bring because first you had to offer it as a sacrifice in the temple. Now you brought it home, and you probably had to now flavor it and season it and present it and prepare it. But I don't know. The ladies were certainly welcome. There was no exemption and no exception that the ladies couldn't be there. On the contrary, men and women, everybody was part of the Korban Pesach. But you're asking about this process? I think it was only the men's section that was involved in this process. Because the Kohanim are the ones who actually brought the sacrifice for you. They were the ones who did the ritual ceremony on the altar. So they were the ones, that was a men's section. But there was certainly ladies were there, they were present, but you didn't eat it at the temple. You went home to your family or to your hotel room or to your B&B. That's where you ate it. Good question. Excellent. Tzipora? You answered your question already. Okay. You think alike. Okay. Next. Nichnasa kasari shaina. What happens? The first group entered and nismala azara. They filled the temple court. Noya they closed the doors. So they went in as groups. Okay, you had 3 groups at a time, 30 people per group. Next, what were they doing? Let's read it. While they were slaughtering the offerings and bringing their parts onto the altar, they would sing Hallel. They had a concert. They had an official ensemble, a choral ensemble. Who were the people who sang? The Levim, the Levites. Okay? Yeah. Im gamru isa kedem shekriv kulam shani ma'isavim shani yishaleshu. So the door was closed. They were there while they were slaughtering the offerings and bringing their parts onto the altar. The Levim continued singing the Hallel. If they finished Hallel before everything was done, then guess what they did? They repeated it again. Very good. And if the people were still not done, then guess what? Sing it again. The truth is, there's so many beautiful tunes to Hallel, I don't think you could run out of time. You could keep singing Hallel over and over. Al kol kriya toikin shalat zikiyas. Each time Hallel was recited, the Kohanim sounded 3 blasts of the trumpet. Guess what sounds they would blast? There wasn't a shofar, but they still blew the same sounds of the shofar: Tekiah, Trua, and Tekiah. You remember those sounds? Tekiah, tu, shvarim, tu, tu, tu. That's the song my daughter, who's 4 years old, brought back home from school before Rosh Hashanah. So I should remember when I'm blowing the shofar what sounds I have to make. Okay. Now that was done. Gamru lahakriv. Once they completed offering the sacrifice, right? They blew the shofars, they did the Hallel, everything. Yatsa, what did they do? Paiskin azara. So now they opened the doors of the temple courtyard, and Yatsa kas rishana kas shnia noilin dalsis azara. So now the first group goes out, and the second group comes in, and now close the door. Your private special time to offer a sacrifice to Hashem. What happens now that the second group goes? What happens next? Kas shlishis. Now again, the third group comes through. Now what happens once they're done? Would you say the next group comes? Nope. Only 3 groups are allowed. And after the 3 groups, there is a cleansing process. We want each group to have a nice clean space. So when that group is finished, they opened the doors, the third group left. But after the three groups, and they also did the same thing, Hallel and sang and the offering. But after the third group, the next group did not yet come back in. First, there was a clean up process. They washed the temple court. Even on Shabbos, they would clean up the mess. It was all the Kohanim. That was part of the jobs of the Kohanim. The Kohanim were the custodians. They were the cleaning crew. They did the offerings. They did the dirty work and the clean work. They did everything. Okay? Now, how did they do the cleaning? Did they use handy andy? Did they bring, what are the other cleaning products you like to use? Jik? Water. Okay, let's read it. The procedure was done as follows. A stream of water passed through the temple court. By the way, when you go to Israel, you should see the cisterns and the plumbing systems they had at the temple. It's remarkable. It's incredible to see what they had. It was a very unique system of running water, and that's how they would do it. And I'm just reading all the Hebrew so we could spend time in the translation. A stream of water passed through the temple court. It had an outlet from the court, and when they wished to wash the floor, they shut that outlet, and the stream overflowed its sides until the water rose and flooded the floor all around and gathered all the blood and refuse of the court. And only then they opened the outlet. And what happened? All the water would flow out. And then they made sure the floor was completely clean and sparkling. What was the temple floor made of? Anyone know? Carpet, linoleum, what do you think it was? Marble. Marble, so it would shine. This is all done in order to keep the temple honorable, respectable, dignified, clean, and beautiful. Pardon? No shoes. You didn't wear shoes. You took your shoes off before you went on the Temple Mount. So there was no shoes. But I'm sure there was blood spritzed, and it was a little bit gory to think of it. It's looked a little bit like an abattoir. But they cleaned up after each third group. So 3 groups, 30 people minimum in each, offered the sacrifice, closed the door, each one did their procedure and then cleaned up. And after each third group, again, they cleaned up. What happened if you slaughtered your Korban Pesach and it turns out that it was a treifa? The animal was found to be unkosher, treif. What happens now? Even today, you don't know if your food is kosher until after you, after you eat it. That was funny, Jill. That was funny. That's funny. You remind me, I have a Persian friend in New York. He's a very wealthy guy, and he gets a lot of mishulachim. He always has staff in his house, Persian staff. Everything's Persian. They're Persian, and they're very proud of the Persian heritage. And they have staff in their home who are always making, he told me in Tehran, he has a big house in New York, but in the 5 towns in Lawrence. But he told me in Tehran, his family was so wealthy, they had a square block was their home in Tehran. That's how big they had. Anyways, they always get mishulachim. So he used to joke with me. He said, some of the mishulachim, they would come, they would eat the delicious meal, and afterwards go, what was the hashkucha? Okay. If it was unkosher, you have not fulfilled your obligation until you bring another Korban Pesach. It has to be kosher. Okay. Let's continue. For most of us, it's difficult to visualize ourselves involved in bringing the Korban Pesach. It's hard. I just described it could get gory. Maybe they had nice ventilation. They also had incense, that fragrance to counter the smell of the animals. They had the Kataris, which was itself a whole unique, interesting phenomenon, and the golden altar. And that's in this week's Parsha too. So I'm sure the aromas, the fragrance, the frankincense, and all the different, there were various ingredients, 19, right? Those had to be, and a specific recipe. I'm sure that created a beautiful, pleasant aroma to counter this. But either way, it's difficult for us to imagine the dramatic shift in global events that will have to occur for Mashiach to come. Maybe it's not so difficult for us to imagine because the world is going through serious winds of change these days, right? But I'm sure when Mashiach comes, there'll be peace in the world, and we'll have a different world altogether, so I'm not worried. But my friends, just as the Rebbe told those who asked him if a Holocaust could happen again, and said it could happen tomorrow morning, the Rebbe also emphasized that Mashiach could also come, not tomorrow, but today, okay? And so once Mashiach comes, please God, right away, then we'll experience all the spiritual highs of entering the temple courtyard, and everything that we just read here in the Korban Pesach will make perfect sense. And so please God, that happens speedily in our days. Okay, let's look now at the matzah. I'm going to look at this more in detail on when? We're going to look at the matzah more on Monday. Monday's shiur. Monday we have our matzah factory. But before we go to the matzah factory, I will give you a shiur on the matzah, why we eat specifically handmade. But let's just discuss it very quickly. Matzah is more than just a food. It's a way we live and relive the Exodus. It's also the only biblical mitzvah that we have today that we actually eat and digest. Okay? So according to Kabbalah, the matzah you eat on the first night of Pesach, it strengthens the faith of our soul. And the matzah that we eat on the second night of Pesach has the healing for our body and soul. So first night is a night of healing, of faith. Second night's a night of healing. Make sure you eat both. And make sure you get the real thing, because not all matzahs are created equal. Let's remember that. There's year-round matzah. It looks like matzah. It tastes like matzah. It has the same ingredients as matzah, flour and water. But it wasn't made for Pesach, and so it could very likely be chametz. It could even be not kosher. I was in a spar in Pretoria a couple of years ago. I was there for a meeting. I went into the spar, I was looking for something, and all of a sudden, they told me, oh, we have Jewish bread. They showed me a box of matzah imported from Poland, and it was called Jewish bread. Yeah, no hechsher on it. Okay, so I don't know if they baked it in the same oven they baked pork. It's not kosher. You can't just eat it, even if it's just flour and water, because not only could it be chametz, it could be not kosher. Okay, so it's not kosher. Matzah, any food you buy has to have a hechsher. And if it doesn't say kosher lePesach, it could likely be chametz. Okay? Well, that's possible. I remember we even had one year at the retreat where we took out our order from Kosher World and we found something that wasn't kosher for Pesach. It's possible. It happens. Kosher World sells both items, and it's possible things could be mixed in that aren't the right thing. Okay? Then we have matzah shira. What's rich matzah? It's made with fruit juice or eggs or some other special, nice extra ingredients. There's even chocolate matzah and onion matzah and other flavors. Those are not the ones you should be using for your Seder. If you want to use it other times in Pesach, maybe. Okay, it's certified kosher, and you could use it if you need to. In fact, egg matzah should only be eaten on Pesach if a person is infirm or a person's unwell, right? But it should only be eaten by those who are ill or for whatever health reasons can't stomach plain matzah. Yeah, those who don't have teeth, my grandmother, I remember in her old age, used the egg matzah. Okay. There's machine-made matzah. Machine-made matzah, there's two types. Matzah was carefully guarded from all moisture from the moment it was harvested all the way until it reached your Seder table. And it's good, it's kosher, and according to some, it's even better. But in the Chabad tradition, the best matzah you should get is the one you're going to help us pack tomorrow. The handmade, round, shmura matzah. That's what you should use, at least for your Seder. You want to make sure that that's the specific matzah that was made by hand specifically for Pesach. And we haven't yet invented machines that could have that in mind. Granted, I'll talk about that more on Monday. You can have in mind when you're activating the machine, but it's not good enough. The ultimate matzah is the one that's made by hand, with passion, with enthusiasm, with excitement. It's made in a bakery where everybody says, L'shei mitzvah's matzah, for the sake of mitzvah of baking matzah. And every time they're kneading and they're rolling and they're baking, whatever they're doing, L'shei mitzvah's matzah, for the sake of the mitzvah of matzah. Granted, in a machine matzah bakery, they will say it's two, multiple times as well, but it's not the same. Now, what's that? Within 18 minutes, okay? We'll discuss all the details of that on Monday's shiur. Now, of course, The only time you have to eat matzah is when? At the Seder. In Israel, it's only Wednesday night. In diaspora, it's both Wednesday and Thursday. During when eating matzah on the day before Pesach, or even now, for 30 days before, undermines the whole story. So it's a no-no. Even children mustn't eat matzah. Like obviously, it's a little kid, maybe, but many people refrain from eating matzah from the whole month before Pesach, young and old alike. We don't want to undermine. We don't want to rush into it. So those are all done before. An Israeli living in the Gola. It's a good question. If you are Israeli living in diaspora, which there are many Israelis living here in South Africa, if your main home is still in Israel, now how do you determine where the person's main home is? I would say, but where do you spend more time? If you're spending more time out of Israel, then I would say you are a diaspora Jew. If you spend more time in Israel, you are an Israeli Jew. There is a local doctor here who's a friend of mine. A couple of years back, he said to me, Rabbi, I bought a house, an apartment in Israel. I said, that's amazing. He says, you know why? So I could play golf on the second day of Yom Tov. I don't have to keep it. I'm now Israeli. I said, oh, interesting. I don't know if it works that way, but cool. Where in Israel did you buy your house? He said, I bought an apartment. It's over $1 million shekel. Where? In Eilat. Eilat is not even part of biblical Israel, so I don't know if he really fulfilled his obligation, but I won't argue with him. I'll let his rabbi do that. But the doctor was so excited to tell me that he did that. Okay, now that we're going into the Seder itself, although we'll only go for a little bit more, for 10, 15 more minutes for today, the centerpiece of the Seder table is our kaira. That's the plate of which the Haggadah said, and there are different ways to organize the Seder plate. The one I show you on this screen is the one according to Rabbi Isaac Luria, who is known as the Arizal. So we discussed it in detail. We're just looking at your shopping list now. Okay, we have to drink 4 cups of wine, so make sure you have nice wine that you can handle. I don't know if they have it here, but there's a wine called Eminent Dry. It's very good for the Seder because it's just, their tagline was, have a clear cup for the 4 cups. So it's about having it keeps your head clear. You want to drink most of your cup. Therefore, I don't recommend drinking from these cups that we serve you coffee in. These are big cups, eh? But people were complaining when we gave the small cups, so we gave you big cups. They're more expensive, these. There is a certain number. It's about 86 mils, 3-point-something ounces. So in that case, ideally, you should get those small cups. You can buy an 86 ml cup. You can buy a 100 ml cup. They're easy to buy. You're fulfilling your obligation by drinking the full cup rather than drinking from a big cup and leaving it half or more than half full. Yeah? Good. If you can't, very good point. If you really don't like wine, we want this to be an enjoyable experience, then you can have grape juice. Or if you're diabetic, I don't know if grape juice is better for diabetics either. But then there are low sugar, there are diabetic friendly wines, but you'll find the right thing that works for you. If you want to do a mix, by the way, mixes taste nice. I do a mix. I find a mix tastes nice. You take the Rashi grape juice and the wine. Now, you could also drink sparkling wine. There's a lot of halachas about the wine. I don't know if you want to go into that. But to tell you, the best is the best wine you could drink. The most expensive wine, the fanciest wine, the most aged wine. But some of those wines, the more aged and the more fancy, you can't gulp them down as you do Kiddush. Those are more to savor. So I wouldn't recommend those wines for your Seder. I would say for the Seder, better drink the light wine. And then during the dinner, you could do the fancier wines and get you a headache. Okay. Which one? Ideally, we say red. But some people have a fancier white wine. Or you don't want to spill on your shirt. So you could go with the white wine. You like the sparkling one that hardly tastes, because whatever wine that works for you. Okay. We spoke about the matzah already. The matzah is the star of our show. So like we said, you use the real thing, get the round matzahs, hand-baked shmura. Now, how many? How many? If you get a fancy kaira, they come with 3. My father had this beautiful silver matzah. Each one had its own shelf. It was very nice to see. Now, that's nice. I don't have one of those. I wonder where my father's kaira went. So if you can't do that, they make these cloth ones, and you slip it in that has like slides. Some people use envelopes. If you don't have anything, you could put serviettes, napkins in between. But whatever it is, you have 3 whole matzahs. But if you're having a lot of people at your Pesach Seder, then get more than that. You need at least 3 whole matzahs, okay? Make sure that everybody at your table has matzah and enough to eat according to the proper shiur. So that will depend on how many people there are. I think each person has to have at least a half of the handmade shmura matzah per person. And it's best you eat your final matzah, the afikoman, as we said before midnight, depending where you are in the world. But if you're here in Joburg, 12, 11 a.m., because Pesach comes in relatively early. Candlelighting here is about 5:45. I would say you could start your Seder really by 7 p.m. comfortably. What time did you start last year in Durban? Len? I don't remember. We did it by 7 o'clock. It's very easy at our retreat. Shul, Mincha is quarter to 6. Korban Pesach, davening is done by 6:30. It's really easy. In fact, I stretch out the davening. I give a little shear. You have a nice discussion so that you could start at 7 o'clock. We recommend 8:30 Shulchan Aruch, and then you have plenty of time till Afikoman. Okay, but look at the exact times that work for you. Okay, just to look at these items again, you have the zra on the top right-hand side. That will be, depending what you want, some people using a leg of a sheep or a goat. Some people use, we use the neck, exactly. So that's what a lot of people, we burn it. We discussed those details, so I'm not going to look at it now. On the top left, we discussed the beitza, the egg. We discussed how that commemorates the Korban Chagiga, the festival offering. You have the maror, or the chazeret, the bitter vegetable. You need at least 34 grams per person. So even if you put just a little bit on your Seder plate, have extra on the table, okay? 2 servings per person. And we use romaine lettuce or horseradish or a combination of both. Again, my father used to use endives and whatever other things, radishes, okay? Horseradish you use only if it's unadulterated. So don't pickle it to sweeten it, okay? We like the root itself, and it's a real hands-on, bitter labor experience to grate it. Okay, and it doesn't taste that great, but if you have sinuses, it's very good to open up. And there is charoset, the pasty, that mushy sweet stuff that usually is made of crushed apple, pear, walnuts, wine, whatever. We discussed the details then. And then we also said you need the karpas. Karpas is a dippable vegetable, such as parsley. That's what you see in the picture here. Make sure it's clean, that's free of bugs. Other people use celery, some people use carrot sticks. We use potato and raw onion. That's what we use. You dip it in the salt water and enjoy. Or don't enjoy. It's not meant to be enjoyed. It's meant to be bitter. Lettuce, some people, okay. Let's talk about other things that I think you need for your Pesach Seder. A pillow is a good idea. Pardon? You're going to eat the egg later on, also dipped in salt water. You're going to eat the egg as your appetizer for the first part of the Shulchan Aruch. Now, a lot of people like to have a nice pillow at everyone's chair. Since we're celebrating freedom and free people have a right to be comfortable, we'll also use a pillow throughout the Seder. When the instructions call for us to lean, when you're drinking your wine and when you're eating, you lean to the left. A lot of people have a custom not to eat roast meat on the first Seder night. And talking about our meals, it's a good idea that you warn your guests that you won't be starting the meal for a while, okay? So they won't be arriving starving hungry. You also don't want to eat too much, so have a nice balance. Not the first night. We don't eat lamb, no. Not at the Seders. What else do we need? What's the most important thing that you'll need for the Seder? The people who could say, if God hadn't taken our ancestors out of Egypt, then we and our children and our grandchildren would still be slaves in Egypt. In other words, you can need the people who left Egypt. Who are those people? Us, Jews, right? So we need Jews. Get as many Jews as you can to your Seder. The Rebbe said that back in, that we read about the four children at the Seder table, the 4 questions and the 4 children, but there's also a 5th one who's not always present. So let's make sure they are present. They come, get everybody there. Did I tell you my story at the Pesach Seder not the Seder? Yeah, it was second night Pesach. We do it at Hunter's Rest now, but in 2014 we did it at Sun City. And I was coming to give my shiur in the afternoon at the conference room that was designated for our shul. And I come there and I see a wedding set up outside, okay? But I go into the shul, I'm getting my papers out, just, getting the place ready. A little bit of a mess. And in walks a fellow wearing a little bit of a funny collar. And he looks and he goes, Are you the Dormani? So I look at him, I say, I don't even know what a Dormani is. And I'm like, what's a Dormani? A thick Afrikaner accent. So then he explains, no, are you the pastor? So I'm like, oh, I'm the rabbi. Oh, Rabbi. I don't know why they can't say rabbi, Rabbi. So he starts talking to me, Rabbi. He says, he starts asking me questions and quizzing me all about Jewish weddings. I said, okay, let's talk about it. I was very excited. I just officiated a few weddings. In fact, I'm officiating a wedding tomorrow, for anyone wanted to know. So he asks me lots of questions. Why the chuppah's open, and why the bride circles the groom 7 times, and why we hold the candles, and why we break the glass, and about the significance of the blessings, you name it. At the end of all this, he says, I got to go. I have a wedding to officiate outside. I said, no worries. I've never been to a non-Jewish wedding. Can I observe how you officiate? Rabbi, it would be my greatest pleasure. Great. I come outside, and there he's starting to, the wedding is called for 4:30. They're going to start, it's 4:25. I see a very nervous groom standing there twiddling his thumbs like this. He was like so nervous. So I stretch out my hand. I say, I give him a nice warm handshake. I say, congratulations. In our language, we say, Mazel Tov. And he looks at me, he goes, Ma ta choshev shani Yehudi. I don't remember exact words. You think I'm Jewish? So I'm like, how do you know Hebrew? Are you? No, it wasn't that, because I remember he said something to me afterwards. So I asked him, I wished him, I said Mazel Tov, and then he started talking to me in Hebrew. So I asked him if he's Jewish. I'm forgetting exactly how it worked. It's 12 years ago already. The story happened. 13 years ago. So I asked him if he's Jewish. He's like, what, you think I stam know Hebrew? So I'm like, then why are you getting married here at Sun City on Pesach night with a galach, with a priest? There's no shortage of rabbis. He says he's from Joburg and he was marrying out of the faith. He chose to get married at Sun City at the palace on Pesach because he wanted to be as far away from the Jewish community, from people as possible. And guess what? He runs away from the shul, and the shul follows him. Yeah. So that is a nice little story, my friends. There's a lot more I want to go through, but I think we should leave the rest of it for next week. There's so much to discuss. And while I said next week, we're only going to do next week, I might have to extend to the week after for a few days if you want to do more about Pesach. But we're going to end here for today. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to wish you a great day and enjoy lunch, enjoy your rest of the day's schedule. And tomorrow morning, please come help us taking matzah. Looking forward